In this video, let's use the first and second derivative tests to find the relative extrema of some functions. Ang first item natin ay si f of x equals negative 4x cubed plus 3x squared plus 18x. Ang derivative niya ay si f prime of x equals negative 12x squared plus 6x plus 18. Factor out natin si GCF na negative 6. Then factor si trinomial para makuha yung factored form na negative 6 times 2x minus 3 times x plus 1. Equating this to 0 para makuha ang critical numbers, we have x equals 3 halves at x equals negative 1. By the first derivative test, masasabi natin na may relative extrema si f of x sa point na negative 1 f of negative 1 at sa 3 halves f of 3 halves. Kunin naman natin si second derivative. F double prime of x is equal to negative 24x plus 6 or negative 6 times 4x minus 1. Since 0 ito when x is 1/4, sasabi natin na may point of inflection tayo sa point na 1/4 f of 1/4. Applying the second derivative test sa critical numbers natin, at x equals negative 1, f double prime of negative 1 is equal to negative 24 times negative 1 plus 6, which is equal to 24 plus 6, which is positive. Ibig sabihin, yung relative extrema natin doon ay isa palang relative minimum. At x equals 3 halves, f double prime of 3 halves is negative 24 times 3 halves plus 6, which is equal to negative 36 plus 6, which is negative. Which implies na relative maximum yung extrema natin doon. To summarize our results, we have our f of x. Factoring out si negative x, we have this expression. Solving for the zeros, we have 0. And this numerical expression na galing sa quadratic formula. So hindi siya nice na integer. The point of inflection is at 1/4 f of 1/4. The relative extrema are negative 1 f of negative 1, which is a relative minimum, and 3 halves f of 3 halves, which is a relative maximum. Sa open interval na negative infinity to 1/4, concave up yung direction ng graph. Sa open interval na 1/4 to positive infinity, concave down naman si graph natin. Let's verify this by plotting the graph of f of x kay Desmos. And we can see all these values, no? So the graph confirms our result and we can move on to the next example. Our second function is h of x equals 4x raised to 1/2 plus 4x raised to negative 1/2. Ang derivative niya ay h prime of x is equal to 2x to the negative 1/2 minus 2 times x to the negative 3 halves. Rewrite natin as rational functions para makombine as one fraction. We have h prime of x equals 2x minus 2 all over x raised to 3 halves. Ang critical numbers natin dito ay 1 at 0. We have a relative extremum at x equals 1 by applying the first derivative test. And we can say na may vertical asymptote tayo sa x equals 0 kasi kahit sa original function, magkakaroon ng 0 sa denominator when x is equal to 0. I-take naman natin yung second derivative. We have h double prime of x equals negative x to the negative 3 halves plus 3 times x to the negative 5 halves. Applying the second derivative test, at x equals 1, h double prime of 1 equals negative 1 plus 3, which is positive. So this tells us na may relative minimum tayo sa point na 1, h of 1. Balikan natin si h double prime. Pwede natin siya i-rewrite as negative x plus 3 all over x to the 5 halves. Since 0 siya when x equals 3, may point of inflection tayo sa point na 3, h of 3. And let's summarize our results. Si h of x pwede natin i-rewrite na 4x plus 4 all over x to the 1/2. So mukhang may 0 tayo, no, sa negative 1. Kasi mag-0 yung numerator doon. Pero dahil yung denominator ay square root of x, wala sa domain ng function natin ang negative 1. Kaya walang zeros itong function natin na ito. From the first derivative, we have critical numbers sa 1. At ito ay relative extremum at sa x equals 0, we have a vertical asymptote. By the second derivative test, yung extremum na nakuha natin sa 1h of 1 ay confirmed to be a relative minimum. May point of inflection tayo sa 3h of 3. So yung graph natin ay concave up in the open interval 0 to 3 at concave down in the open interval 3 to positive infinity. Let's plot h of x kay Desmos to confirm our results. And verified naman siya based dun sa values na nakuha natin sa summary. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. Let me know if you have any questions at salamat sa pakikinig.